Hard work is a scam. If it was really the answer, every construction worker would be a millionaire. But they're not. Because the game was never about hours. It was about leverage. And that's where the so-called lazy ones win. See, society loves to brainwash you with this idea that the one who suffers the most deserves the most. But reality doesn't work like that. The world doesn't care how much you sweat. It only cares about results. You don't get paid in pain points, you get paid in impact. And that's why people who conserve their energy, who play chess instead of checkers, who refuse to burn themselves out chasing someone else's definition of success, end up creating lives everyone else envies. Think about it. You've probably been told since you were a kid that hard work is the secret to success. Parents, teachers, bosses, all repeating the same tired line. Work hard, put in the hours, sacrifice now for a better tomorrow. And yet, look around. The hardest workers you know aren't living the dream. They're stuck in the grind, paycheck to paycheck, back hurting, soul drained, waiting for weekends that vanish in the blink of an eye. And the people actually living free, traveling, building, creating, half of them don't even look like they work at all. That's because they figured out the truth. Life is not about how much effort you can pour in. It's about how much leverage you can create with the effort you do spend. Leverage is the code word nobody taught you. It's the hidden cheat code of every so-called lazy genius in history. Leverage is doing something once and letting it pay you forever. Leverage is creating a system that works harder than you. Leverage is saying one thing in a room and letting it echo in 1,000 conversations you never attend. That's why authors, inventors, entrepreneurs, investors, the ones who seem lazy compared to the grinders, end up changing the world. They stopped competing on effort. They started competing on positioning. Let's get real here. Hard work feels noble, but it's actually a trap. You ever notice how people brag about their hours like it's a badge of honor? I worked 14 hours today. I only slept 3. I skipped every meal. Like, congratulations, you just described torture. Meanwhile, the so-called lazy person is chilling, resting, and then makes one move that outshines your entire week. That's the difference between working in the business and working on the business. Between being the pawn and being the player. Look at history. Thomas Edison tested over 10,000 filaments before finding the right one for the light bulb. That's grind. Nikola Tesla? He visualized the experiments in his head and built the working version once. That's leverage. Edison looked like the harder worker. Tesla looked lazy. But who was closer to genius? Albert Einstein spent hours walking aimlessly, staring at clouds, thinking. People thought he was wasting time. But that so-called laziness birthed relativity, which bent the entire universe of physics. The greatest breakthroughs never come from endless grind. They come from stillness, from strategy, from daring to conserve your energy until the right strike. But here's where I want to go deeper, because you might be sitting there thinking, okay, Sam, that's cute, but how does this apply to me? I don't have Tesla's brain or Einstein's imagination. I'm just trying to survive my job, pay my bills, and maybe get ahead one day. And that's exactly why you need to hear this. Because the grinders around you, the ones who look unstoppable, most of them are sprinting on treadmills. They burn calories, they sweat, they look busy, but they're not actually moving forward. They confuse exhaustion with progress. And if you play their game, you'll lose. You'll burn out. You'll wake up at 50 wondering where the decades went. But if you learn to pause, to zoom out, to ask yourself not, how can I work harder, but what can I work on that removes the need for more work later, you start winning. That's the lazy way. And let me call out something real ugly. A lot of hard work is just insecurity in disguise. People grind not because they love the work, but because they're terrified of not being enough. They think if they just work longer, people will finally respect them. They use busyness like armor. But here's the harsh truth. Nobody respects effort for effort's sake. People respect outcomes. Nobody remembers how many nights Steve Jobs stayed awake. They just remember that you're literally holding his vision in your pocket right now. Nobody cares how many battles Alexander the Great fought. They remember he built an empire before the age of 33. Nobody counts your hours. They only count what those hours became. So if you're spending all your energy trying to prove yourself, you're already losing. Because the person who looks lazy but builds something timeless will always outshine the person who kills themselves for temporary applause. Let me put it another way. Imagine you're digging a hole with a spoon. You're sweating, you're pushing yourself, you're working 10 times harder than the guy next to you. But he's got a shovel. He digs faster, cleaner, easier, and he finishes while you're still breaking your back. Now imagine someone else walks up with an excavator. He pushes one button and the job is done in minutes. Who's the genius? It's not about how hard you dig, it's about what you dig with. The grinders are stuck on spoons. The lazy geniuses look for shovels. The real winners build excavators. That's leverage. But let's break it down into something practical. The lazy way to beat people who work harder than you starts with a simple question. What's the 20% of effort that gives me 80% of the result? That's the Pareto principle, the law of the vital few. And it's everywhere. 20% of your clients bring 80% of your income. 20% of your habits create 80% of your growth. 20% of your moves shape 80% of your life. The grinders will spend their whole lives pouring energy into the 80% that barely matters. You, if you're smart, pour your focus into the 20% that changes everything. That's the difference between working hard and working effectively. Here's another angle. Hard workers rarely notice opportunities because they're too busy grinding. They're heads down, locked in the hamster wheel, obsessed with motion, blind to openings. The lazy person, the one who pauses, who has space, who isn't drowning in busyness, they actually notice. They see the cracks in the system. They spot the opportunities hiding in plain sight. They hear the conversations others are too distracted to catch. That's why the so-called lazy ones always seem lucky. Luck isn't magic. Luck is noticing what others miss because you weren't too busy trying to prove yourself. Now let's flip it back to you. If you feel like you've been losing to people who work harder than you, the truth is you've been playing the wrong game. Stop trying to match their hours. Stop trying to out-hustle them. That's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. You don't beat them by grinding more, you beat them by grinding less in the right place. Learn to say no. Learn to cut out busy work. Learn to step back and ask, is this moving me closer to my vision, or am I just keeping myself busy to feel valuable? That one shift is the beginning of everything. And yeah, I know this sounds uncomfortable, because our whole culture worships hustle. If you're not tired, you're not working hard enough. If you're not busy, you're not important. But let me tell you something. Busyness is the new poverty. It's proof that you don't own your time. The richest people in the world don't brag about how busy they are. They brag about how much freedom they have. They brag about mornings with no alarms, afternoons with no meetings, nights with no worries. That's real wealth. And you don't get there by working yourself into the grave. You get there by daring to look lazy now so you can look free forever. The truth is, the lazy way is actually the human way. We evolved to conserve energy. Our ancestors didn't waste calories unless it mattered. They weren't jogging for fun. They were resting until the hunt. That instinct is still inside you. You're not broken for not wanting to grind all day. You're wired for survival. The trick is to channel that laziness into strategy instead of avoidance. Don't just waste time scrolling. Use that time to observe, to learn, to connect dots, to build leverage that pays you later. And here's the real gut check. If you're lazy without vision, you're just drifting. But if you're lazy with vision, you're dangerous. Because you'll find the shortcuts nobody else dared to see. You'll cut through the noise. You'll build the life everyone else is too busy to even imagine. The grinders will laugh at you at first. They'll say you're not serious, you're not committed, you're not working hard enough. And then one day, they'll look up and realize you've lapped them without ever breaking a sweat. That's the sweet revenge of strategic laziness. So let me leave you with this. Stop worshiping effort. Start worshiping outcomes. Stop trying to prove how much you can suffer. Start asking how much you can create with the least wasted energy. Because in the end, the world doesn't remember who worked the hardest. It remembers who changed the game. And maybe, just maybe, the laziest version of you. The one who refuses to waste energy. Who waits for the right moment. Who plays chess while everyone else plays checkers. Is the version that was built to win all along. And if that line hits you somewhere deep, if it stings because you've been grinding for years without getting anywhere, or if it frees you because you've always felt guilty for not wanting to grind in the first place, then take this as your wake-up call. Not to work harder, to think harder, to move smarter, to finally give yourself permission to stop running and start building. Because the throne was never reserved for the busiest. It was always reserved for the boldest.